It's 11 o'clock right now. Mr. Chairman, are you on?
I'm on. Good morning to everybody. Certainly appreciate everybody being here. I was listening to people as they signed in, and certainly sounds like we've got a good group, energetic group, important group, and all present and accounted for. So I think we can go ahead and start the meeting by calling the quorum, or calling the roll to establish a quorum. Are you ready to go, Nathan? If you're in,
I am in, and we're. Let's see. Phyllis, you want to call the roll?
Wow, Alshire.
And if you're a designee for one of these folks, just speak up. We've got to call the roll of the actual appointed members, but if you're a designee, just speak up. I'll just call the roll since I'm a little closer, I guess.
Okay.
Dr. Alshire, are you on? Mr. Chairman Harry Brooks, are you on? David Connor?
here.
Senator Gresham? Senator Gresham? Ben Torres?
Here.
Vince Harville?
Present.
Chris Henson?
Here.
I'm on for Sarah Hayburn. Dorsey Hobson? Karen King? Commissioner McQueen?
Mary Ann Dursey for Commissioner McQueen.
Larry Martin? Anyone from Finance and Administration? Wayne Miller? Anybody on from TAWS? Oh, you're on? Okay.
Nathan.
Thank you, sir. Mitchell Moore? Mitchell Moore? Who just?
Hi, Dolores Gresham.
Hi, Senator. Welcome. No one here from City of Athens or Tennessee Municipal League? Rick Nicholson?
Here.
Don Odom?
Here.
Cliff Lippard, you with us?
I'm here.
Thank you. Larry Ridings?
Here.
Mr. Chairman Ralston, you're here. Marianne Sparks from Wilson County? Anyone with us from the Comptroller of the Treasury's office?
Yes, Linda Wesson here for the comptroller.
Great, thanks, Linda. Is Hunter Zanardi on with us?
This is Harry Brooks.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, welcome. Is Hunter Zanardi on with us? So who's joined us in just the last moment? We got Representative Brooks, and then I heard another ding. So who else is with us?
Dolores Gresham.
Yeah, I got Dolores. So it looks like we're just missing Dorsey Hobson, Hunter Zanardi, anyone from Finance and Administration? Okay, Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum for sure.
Great. Thank you. And again, I certainly appreciate everybody being on. This is certainly very important to the committee, and appreciate you dedicating the time to work with us on this. The staff has done, I think, an excellent job of taking the decisions we made at our last meeting, conference call there, and converting that into a draft report. What we want to do today is to go through this draft report and identify any changes that we need to make or corrections. I think we've put it together in very much of a hurry. We'll probably have some errors in it, typographical errors and so forth we need to correct. But the purpose of today's meeting is to go through that report and make any corrections that we need to make, and then we'll produce that as a final report, get that back out to everybody so that we can take action on it on our meeting we have scheduled for Thursday. We'll not plan to take any official action today. We just want to go through the report and make sure that we've identified any challenges or anything that you think needs to be corrected. So Nathan, I'll turn it over to you and get you to walk through the report and pick up any corrections that we need to make.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that very much. I want to say that we had some compatibility issues on the computer that this report was produced on. When you're going through and putting together a report like this, you end up with several iterations of it, and I think the rough draft has some fairly obvious errors in it. It's not something that that we'll do anything but own as far as that goes. The process of producing a report like this, is kind of long and rough. And the idea here is just to have a number of eyes on it. This is by no means a finished product, but we wanted to make certain that folks have had time to look at it and find some errors and get a chance to fix it. Has everyone on the call had a chance to look through the report?
I went through it very quickly. This is Dolores Gresham. I went through it very quickly, but do you want to hit the high points?
Sure. Well, we have at the beginning here, we've started out with all of the statutorily required language, the BEP Review Committee member list, the TCA requirements, as well as the committee recommendations. Unfortunately, I'm having a little technical problem here. For some reason, my email isn't able to pull up in the conference room, and so. But I can just kind of walk through piece by piece. We heard from a couple of the members that they wanted an update on last year's BEP committee recommendations, and we provided that here. Last year, in many ways, was last year's report was a new kind of way of doing things. We wanted to make it a little more targeted. We wanted to set some achievable goals, and we were able to do that this last year in virtually every case. Certainly in the sustained commitment to educator compensation, as frankly as well as every other area that we had. So if we start on page 6, we take a look at our BEP committee recommendations. Now, one thing that we did a little bit differently this year, as you all remember, is that we also put this into a letter that was transmitted to the Commissioner of F&A, the Commissioner of Education, and to the Governor's Office the very first week of August. And the reason that we did that is because a report that comes out at this point in time is almost always too late to affect the executive budget document as it exists. Nonetheless, the requirement in the law is still there, and so we definitely go through the process of putting that together. So let's take a look at our committee recommendations for this year. First of all, is there anything else you would like to see at the top of page 6 on the update to 2015-16 or 2015 BEP committee recommendations? Anyone just speak up. Nothing. Okay. So looking at the 2016 BEP committee recommendations there on the second half of page 6.
Hey, Nathan.
Yeah.
This is Rick. I'm sorry. At the top of page 6 under the 15, maybe it could be clearer. The second bullet doubles the BEP technology component from 20 to 40 with a $15 million increase. Looks odd.
Yeah. Okay.
Where the other 5 come from. So maybe that could be stated better.
Yeah, a little differently. How should we? Thoughts, Mary Ann, Brad? What do you think? How do we? Just because
the other 5 is from the match.
Right, and maybe just to delineate that the 15 million is the state share of that cost, and that the balance is part of the required local match for the districts.
Okay. All right. I think that's a great catch.
I have Can I make 2 comments?
Oh, you can make
Okay.
tons of comments. That's exactly what this is for. Nobody's ego is on the line, nothing like that. This is a working document for the whole committee, and we all need to have some ownership in it. So you're not gonna hurt anybody's feelings by any means.
The third bullet looks at keeping the early graduates in the ADM count for months 5, 6, and 7. I think we need to include all of the months that are used in funding, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7, because it is possible for someone to graduate earlier than December.
5 is not included.
Well, 5 is used for school-based.
Okay.
So we do 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7.
Yes.
Does that add some clarity? Other folks good with that?
Sounds good.
And then my other comment on that section, the 5.6% increase to the salary unit cost, we have, I think, gone to great lengths from the department's perspective at least in our discussions not to use a percentage. That tends to cause great confusion and set up an anticipation by many of our professional personnel
Right.
that they are going to get that much of an increase. And so we have spoken only of the dollar amounts of the 2 unit costs. In other words, we raised it from 42,065 to 44,430. And not done a percent because there is no longer any mandated state percentage increase required.
Okay, so just strike the and a 5.6% increase to the salary unit cost?
And you could even say an increase to 44,430 as the unit, as a salary unit cost. Just to speak in terms of the dollars rather than a percent,
44,000.
430.
430. All right, that's great. That's great.
12 months of insurance is not 134 million.
Yeah, is that 134 million the total increase to the BEP? Because that's good catch, Brad.
That's the salary and,
Yeah, that's all of it
That's
together, isn't it?
everything, okay.
Okay,
What,
so should I
what about
delineate?
adding,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Ben, what about adding after around the 134 million increase, which includes the 12-month of medical insurance and an increase to the salary component of the BEP, something along those lines, just to show that that 134 million includes both of those 2 separate things, because both of those were very big.
Okay, is it, we have some thoughts on that? Sitting here with Mary Ann and Brad, when it comes to the figures and making sure that everybody's checking them twice, these are definitely our go-to people, so.
I mean, we could list out the other change, I mean, that 134 includes the change in EL funding, it includes the change in special ed, the technology.
No, I think the 134 they're getting at is specifically the salary
Oh, that's
unit
right.
cost and the 12-month insurance. So it's the sum of the two.
Is that right?
It is the
Okay,
sum of the two.
okay.
So
You're right.
we good with leaving it the way it is then? Or do we still wanna say,
Well, I think you have an opportunity.
we change it to an increase to 44,430, but we don't need to delineate the other pieces, or we do?
The 134, which includes the 12th month and the salary, yeah.
Or you have an opportunity to put in parentheses, what the cost of each component was, 27 million and 107 million, whatever the actual breakout is.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what we're gonna do on our end is try to get out another draft of this report as soon as possible. Anything that an individual member sees that they wanna phrase differently, you can certainly send me your exact text that you'd like to use, but just keeping in mind that it's a short window between now and Thursday when we have our next meeting, and our statutory deadline is the 1st, and I intend to beat that deadline. So we intend to stay well within the law.
Nathan,
Sir?
this is Wayne Miller. Mary Ann, one thought. you alluded to it coming away from the percentage statement. For those districts that are, the language needs to reflect for those districts that are above those minimums that this is not mandated. And does that make sense, Mary Ann? So this statement reflects it's an increase in investment that districts had to
Hey,
plug
Wayne?
into what they were already doing, yes.
Yeah, I think that would be accomplished by one of our first edits we thought of in that first bullet points was to take out the 5.6% language and change it as an increase to 44,430. Would that take care of it so that none of your folks think it's a mandated 5.6% raise?
Yeah, I think so, Nathan. I just making sure that mandated language in there, I just wanted to double check.
No, I think that's reasonable. Everybody else feel comfortable with changing that, an increase to 44,430?
But I will point out that increase is a 5.6% increase from the last salary unit cost, so.
Right. So it's just, I guess the concept is for clarity, because my experience is that it seems that when we do these increases, no matter how many times we talk about what the final executive budget says, there seems to be confusion in districts with people thinking they're getting a raise by that percentage, as opposed to the increase, recognizing that some of it can go to insurance costs and other compensation factors instead of flat salary. So am I stating the concern accurately, Mary Ann, and from others' concerned viewpoints?
Yes, that's it, exactly.
Okay. So just for clarity, I think we can, but you're right, I mean, I appreciate the affirmation that the math isn't wrong. I truly do.
I think this is Linda Wesson with Comptroller's Office. I think
Linda.
also the problem is people see 5.6% increase to salary, and they quit reading, and they
Yeah.
don't read the salary unit cost allocated for each position, and it's just a formula computation. It's not the salary. So I think making the change you've discussed is probably a good idea.
Okay, great. So in the third bullet point, we change months 5, 6, and 7 to 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. All right, and then we further commend the administration and the General Assembly for the demonstrated commitment to K-12 education, the advancement of Tennessee students. All right, so going into the 2016 recommendations, this language, not necessarily any super pride of authorship there. So, anybody have questions, concerns on pages 6 and 7? I know we have a mistake on page 7 under the funding for guidance counselor ratio improvement, but just on the first part of page 6. Thoughts, concerns, comments? Sustained commitment to educator compensation, funding for English language learner supports, first sentence there. Once, twice. On to page 7, without objection. Everybody okay with that?
At the top, the very first section, which is a continuation of the paragraph from the previous page, the last sentence says current appropriations reflect the prior formula ratios of 1 to 25 and 1 to 250. That's actually an improvement.
Right. Now that comes through the BEP Enhancement Act, right? Is that, or as a result of the numbers called for in the BEP Enhancement Act, the budget this last year was an improvement from 1 to 30
Used
down
to
to
be
1?
1 to 30,
Right.
1 to 300, and
Right.
so that prior formula ratios threw me off.
So we'll list this as an improvement in the 2016 budget. Is that a good way to say it?
2017 budget,
What are we in now?
17,
Okay, 2017 budget. Yeah, the 2016-17 budget.
yeah.
You could amend it to just say, take out the word prior, and I think you would be okay.
Reflect formula ratio, that's true.
Okay, Would that be easier?
Yeah.
Everybody
Sorry,
see,
that works.
everybody see what we're saying there? It's, the way we phrase it might be a little confusing. Okay, that's what we're gonna do, is we're gonna strike the word prior and not worry with the other language unless there's significant objection or insignificant objection. I'm pretty easy, about these things. If you wanna object insignificantly, I'll take it, it's fine. Okay. The, let's see, guidance counselor ratio improvement. Representative Brooks,
Yes.
this is an issue that's come up a lot. Representative Brooks and I serve on a number of blue ribbon task forces, committees, and helpful different undertakings, and this has come up in, I don't know, 4 or 5 different of these kind of steering committees and blue ribbon task forces and so on about this situation with the guidance counselor improvement. So that I know you were a champion for. So if you want to take a look at those numbers and make sure that what we've got in that section is fine.
The concept, not looking at it from an editorial standpoint, the concept is important, and that improving the ratio, and I think the state expenditures. Now, that state expenditures, is that just state dollars from the DEP, or is that total local and state?
That is state dollars only.
State only, okay. Because I think it's critical that we look at improving the ratio, because the demand on the counselor now is more than ever before, with the multitude of programs that we have passed recently and placed into existence. And I think the added task of more and more dual credit, dual enrollment, AP, whatever it might be, more and more in regard to the promise, the idea of counseling kids and families about post-secondary opportunities. That's becoming a big push, and I think the workload, we need to address that, and I think this attempts to address that issue. And also getting some counselors into the lower grades as well.
Well, I'll tell you, and Chairman Fielding Ralston, as you all may or may not realize, the State Board of Education has started having at least 2 of its quarterly meetings around the state, and we start virtually every meeting with a walkthrough of local public schools. And we spent some time at Dresden Elementary and Middle School this last week and met with their one guidance counselor at the middle school who was tasked with absolutely everything under the sun. And it was something I know Chairman Ralston, he was in the group that I was with, and we talked a lot about this issue. So please take a look at that and note that we've certainly been responsive there, or attempt to be, and hopefully we're giving this the attention that it deserves and going to focus the attention of the lawmakers and the budgeters on it. So.
Do we want to show like just the average ratio, or do we want to show what the actual funding ratio is for counselors? Because there's a different level for elementary and secondary.
Anybody? Thoughts? Concerns?
This is Rick. Since the attachment D scenario gives a different for elementary and high school, maybe it would be nice if we showed the current ratio.
Okay.
I think that would be wise as well. And we probably need to specifically, where we direct that ratio improvement as to which of the 2 that we were looking at and how we are addressing both of them.
So I think when we're saying that our aspirational goal is 1 to 250, and are we sitting at what, 1 to 400?
It's 1 to 500 for elementary and 1
Okay.
to 350 for secondary.
And so here we got the 1 to 400 by averaging, and we shouldn't average. It should be 1 to 500.
Yes. And
I think it would be better to break it down specifically for elementary and high school.
Okay, we will certainly do that.
Yeah, Harry's right. That would look much better and even give a better picture of where the where those folks will be. Good call, Harry.
And when we look at the recommendation of 1 to 250, it might be good to specifically say, this is how we want to affect the two different ratios.
Yeah.
Break that down as well.
Just for the record, we are recording the entire call, so it's our hope that in addition to minutes or in lieu of minutes, having the entire thing online so that every word we can go over is a beneficial way of doing things. Okay, so we're agreed to make that clear: 1 to 500 elementary, 1 to 350 high school. Any other changes there?
Nathan, this is David Connor.
Yes, sir.
I think we need some clarity in there as well as far as the scenarios, because we refer them to Appendix D, but I'm even looking through there trying to figure out exactly how the scenarios work in terms of doing it progressively over time. So we get an explanation of what the different scenarios are.
And this is Rick. Actually, I think that should reference Appendix C, since that's where those two ratios are shown.
What did I say? Isn't that great to have extra eyes on there?
Page 29.
So,
That may be it if I'm looking at the wrong appendix.
yeah, there you go. You're exactly right. It's Appendix C. See Appendix C. Yeah, and then it shows you the change to 1 to 400 and 1 to 300, 1 to 20 EL ratio. Yes, okay. Hopefully that brings some light to it. So we change it to the appropriate appendix. Let me see. And I guess by county, the same information is available in Appendix D. So maybe that's where the confusion came from. And so it's Appendix C and D are actually both correct. So maybe we'll just say C and D. So if you want the statewide, it's C.
Actually, I don't see the.
Table below shows a summary of the total projected cost for each recommendation. Table showing
it
the
is,
cost
okay. It's
disaggregated
the
by
last
district
set.
and county. Yeah,
The last set.
there you go. So they are actually in D, but they're also in C, so we certainly could add some clarifying language here. Let's say C and D. Any objection? Okay. So the RTI, I know there was some discussion there about total cost of improvement shown on the. Let's see. Okay, let's just move down to funding for response to instruction and intervention positions. And as I'm recalling the conversations that this committee has had, we're interested in seeing some means of addressing RTI in the formula, out of the formula, however it can be done so that the problem gets solved, not necessarily creating a new section of the BEP formula. Is that accurate based on, I know I've had individual conversations where that's been what I've heard. Am I recalling that accurately from our previous meetings? Anybody?
Nathan, I think your recollection is the same as mine anyway. That's the way I remember it.
Okay. Is it's when it comes to a situation like this is we wanted to give kind of the maximum flexibility to the executive branch as they put the budget together, and to the legislature as they dispose of that request. So that's kind of where we've taken this language from. Thoughts, concerns, things that need to change? Going once? Going twice?
Yeah, this is Rick.
Yep.
What is the current, I see the increase, the last sentence at the top of page 8 in that section was 1 to 1,000, but what's the current ratio?
There is
We
no.
could include that as well.
There's no component, there's nothing there, period.
Okay.
Yeah. So there isn't a current to tell us. So,
Hey, Nathan.
Yes.
Hey, this is Cliff at Taster. One question we did have on that was, are these RTI positions, are they instructional or classroom positions or a mix?
They're instructional.
Right. Yeah, instructional, but again, we're trying to avoid saying exactly how the governor's office and the legislature should get to the business of funding these positions. Frankly, just to make sure that it's done whatever way solves the problem, rather than necessarily creating another section of the BEP formula.
This is Don. There's not a state mandate as to the program that a district uses for RTI. Very much for it. It's a good move for the state of Tennessee, but it'd be very difficult to try to specify because that differs some of how many interventionists you might need in a particular district or a particular school.
Yeah, and I would say to the committee members that from my individual conversations with each of you that this is kind of the first step on a long road. You know, if the state sort of recognizes this and finds a way to at least get us moving in the right direction on that this may be something that we can look at from down the road. Is that kind of the consensus view?
Yes, this is Harry. Let me ask a question as well. On that last line there, funding of 1 to 1,000, increased state expenditures. What would if it's in BEP? What would the local kind of total look like? Would there be a local match or share as with some of the other BEP formula concepts?
Our intrepid colleagues are in the business of running the calculator at the moment to get you an answer on that.
Okay, but there would be a local buy-in as well, right?
There would. Any increase on the state cost in the BEP formula will generate an additional local share.
An additional $9.4 million.
9.4 million statewide.
So it'd be a total of 37.6 inclusive.
Okay.
If you did it within the formula.
Right.
Again, kind of the reason why this request is structured the way it is because, we wouldn't want to tie anybody's hands. We want to make sure that as many options are available to you all and to the executive branch in putting this together.
Again, this concept, this area again, is to say, let's address RTI.
You got it. That's the idea.
That's the essence of this recommendation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We're recommending a particular number in regard to cost if it's within BEP.
If it's within BEP.
The executive, you've got a wide, big plate, do it any way you want to.
That's right. So if you remember from our previous conversations, we wanted to have as much information as we could as it would relate to our specific charge, which is a BEP. But by phrasing it this way, we've stayed within our lane according to the law in this report, while at the same time making a general recommendation that could be dealt with in a different way. And that was the idea, both to be faithful to the law and to recognize an improvement, a doable improvement that could be undertaken. So.
Good thought.
All right. So, anything else on that? Or are we ready to move on? I don't want to necessarily make this a 6-hour committee meeting, and we've tried to move away from that. But let's move to sustained commitment to enhancing school technology. Of course, the budget this last year was very good on that front. I don't know how necessarily awesome this year's revenue collections are going to be. I don't think we don't have F&A on the call, do we? So without F&A on the call, it might be difficult to say what those will be or what they're projected to be. But nonetheless, it was a priority of a majority of the members of this committee, and so thus we have presented the request for a sustained commitment to enhancing school technology. Is everyone okay with the way this is phrased out, or are there changes?
This is Rick.
Connor again. When we discussed this before, didn't we say that right now the department is undergoing a study or surveying schools as far as their technology needs?
I think that was being
I
done.
believe they are, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know if we would want to reference that in here, that this is a recommendation for an additional investment with an eye towards the fact that the department is looking at the actual real-world cost.
Let me ask you this. Now, there was, did one of the task forces, maybe the assessment or one of the other task forces that request was being done under could we just link to their report or something like that? Maybe that would be a way, or?
It could be, I would have to look at that, I don't know.
Sir?
Hey, Nathan, this is Wayne. I don't have it in front of me. Is my memory that the individual out of Memphis was going to have a national study on per pupil expenditures for technology? Is that ringing a bell?
So, yeah, we had a conversation about that, and no one ever sent me what that was. Now, we had checked with ECS, and that's the Education Commission of the States. That's a interstate compact, and they are a fabulous group, and they didn't really have anything for me either on that. So, yes, we did have a conversation about it. No, I didn't get a document to share. We did get the House research staff sent us out some documents, and you'll recall that I forwarded everything I got there. So unfortunately, we don't necessarily have that. But nonetheless, is the language here?
And I'm sorry, this is Rick. Mary Ann, this is a question for you. Last year we put in 15 and it required a $5 million local match roughly. It appears that if we go another 20, it would be 10 state, which means it would be 10 local. How's that working?
It wouldn't be, well, it could be. Part of the problem with the formula is that not every district is gonna benefit from this, and it's going to depend on their fiscal capacity, how much they benefit, so it's not.
Some lose, don't they? I mean, there's some.
I'm not sure anybody loses if we just do this, but there are 40 districts that don't receive any benefit from this.
I see.
Within the formula.
And I hope you understand, page 6 or whatever said, we increased from 20 to 40 for 15 million. Now we're saying from going to 40 to 60 would be 10 million. So something's not adding up there.
That's because of in the BEP Enhancement Act, we have what's called minimum funding, and districts are receiving what they were appropriated at minimum in 15-16, and this additional increase in the component was not generating them additional funds to get them above and beyond the minimum funding. So that's why it's 10 million. I see that it is deceiving, but to your first question, if it was just a flat put in the formula and we didn't have to worry about minimum funding, it would be 15 million state cost and a $5 million local cost.
So the difference is because of the BEP Enhancement Act, which the legislature passed this last year, and that's what makes the difference.
That's very right. Can I ask a question on that?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Well, I noticed that it said that this was outside the formula. That might account for the fact that there wouldn't be any local match in that. And I don't know if that's the road we want to go down.
The $10 million cost is within the formula. If we do this totally outside of the formula, it would cost the state however many dollars we chose to put in as a state. So if we put in $15 million, it would be $15 million cost. No local match, no adjustment for fiscal capacity.
And we structured it this way, correct me if I'm wrong, we kind of had a similar conversation last year when we were angling and making this a priority in last year's report to again say, hey, inside or outside the formula, yes, what we want is the issue dealt with. And again, we're aiming for flexibility with phrasing it this way. If that makes sense. So leaves it a little more open-ended, but at the same time, you know, the goal being the sustained commitment, one way or the other. I think that kind of reflects our conversations last year, and this is very much an extension of what we did last year. Okay. Nothing else on that? So the next section is just going through the law of how we establish the BEP Review Committee. I will be pleased to let you know everybody that's on the call right now was officially appointed again at the meeting we had at University of Tennessee Martin just a week before last, and so congratulations.
Nathan Karen King has joined the conversation.
Hey, welcome. Pleased to have you.
I apologize, but every once in a while you have a little opportunity going on. You can't lose.
You might have other things going, you know. So, no, it's we're very pleased that you were able to join us. Okay, we also mentioned here that for the first time in the committee's history, we did send that information on to the governor's office in the form of a priority list early on. I haven't seen the proposed budget for this year, but just based on feedback from folks in the executive branch, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful this year. I was hopeful last year, and we did very well. So we'll just have to see how that comes up. But you know, whatever isn't there, it won't be because the report came out too late, and it won't be because nobody knew what was going on. We've made a very public commitment to employing useful tools in this process, and I thank everyone for that. All right, and then we get into the multitudes of tables. And I will say, I know there are some formatting issues on some of these, or some of the numbers have some inaccuracies, and I certainly want to walk piece by piece through that and fix what we can. And like I said, again, no pride of authorship. Our job is to make it as accurate as possible. So starting on page 9. Let's correct away.
Nathan, before we leave the narrative,
okay,
can we somewhere in here, maybe when we're talking about adoption of a priority list, make some statement to the effect that, even if it's a disclaimer, just that this report is identifying priorities for the next year, it is not in any way reflective upon some of the information included in previous reports? Because I get questions from people about, why did you not include any of the things that have been in there in the past? Why is all that cut out? Even if we just say we're not making a statement on those, at least in some way acknowledge that there had been other things in the past.
So how would, I mean, you just want me to put a sentence in there that says there have been previous reports and previous sets of priorities?
Well, this is Harry. I don't know, let's not confuse the issue in the sense that every BEP committee may look at priorities different than the previous group, and 6 years ago was different than 10 years ago, and 4 years from now may be different. I think the idea being is that in the current state of affairs, as best we understand it, as best we see it, and as best we think would enhance education in the state of Tennessee, these are our recommendations. The idea being, here are the ideas. As we did in a couple of instances, we're suggesting the administration has latitude on how to deal with it, but we think these are priorities. It's based on conversation with local folks from that standpoint. But I think 15 years ago, there was a total different set of recommendations. I think the point being is that what's in this report is what's recommendations. The idea that we recommended X, Y, and Z 10 years ago, I think that's going to do is just confuse the issue. Let's not let's concentrate on these concepts and try to work to get these adopted and actually implemented within the budget. And let's not argue old issues 10 years ago or some years in the past.
Well,
I think that is
go ahead.
extremely well said, Harry, and I would certainly come down and support that very strongly.
Yeah, I think, I guess that's why we kind of gave the update for last year, but the other thing is, just from the enacting legislation, I mean, with this BEP Enhancement Act, the whole set of assumptions is different. This is, I guess we're not aspiring. So sort of before there was the question of when do you get a full implementation of 2.0, or this model versus that model, and all of that's sort of been answered by the legislature this year. Now that having been said, I'm at the will of members. Further discussion on that? Okay. Then I'd say the good thing about a phone call meeting like this is you can stand up and stretch out anytime you need to, and so let's move on to the page 9. Concerns on page 9.
This is Cliff again from Tasser. You did notice on page 9 that we refer to the average teacher salary as $51,386, which I'm assuming is other licensed individuals also, because back later on page 14, the number that's given is $50,116. I didn't know if we're pulling from a different source or using a different average there.
I'm fairly certain with the NEA averages salary of professional staff. I think, but I've got our one of our contractors, Ari Goldstein's on with us. Ari, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Am I correct in my presumption about that? I know that we pulled that from the NEA average salary. Now,
Yeah.
does that include other professional staff or strictly teachers?
It does include other professional staff. The NEA methodology, as I recall, it includes all instructional personnel as they define it, which I do believe includes principals and administrators, other related staff. It doesn't include support staff, and they define that somewhere in education. And we could totally put more of a description that explains some of those differences in methodology in a bit more detail than I think we currently have in there.
And that's something we had discussed, and we just didn't know if it would muddy the waters too much on the front end to go through the exact kind of their precise process. Brad, did you want to weigh in on this?
I think it would help with any confusion where you use a different figure later.
Yeah, I think that does get. I don't have the report in front of me at the exact moment, but I know that later on I want to say an appendix, but I could be wrong about that. We do discuss the NEA numbers relative to our own numbers in a bit more detail. So there is some discussion about that in the report currently. I'm just not sure if that's where we are at this exact moment. I'm just hopping on now. But
is that CF review of teacher salaries for U.S. Southeastern region?
Exactly.
So it is referenced and explained on page 14. Is what we're saying.
Yes, there is some discussion of the methodological differences there. Yeah. You can also
footnote it. Yeah, we could footnote it as well, maybe on there. But of course, you have done that here.
Yeah, it is footnoted currently, but yeah. So I mean, if people, if members think that we would like to go into more detail in the explanation that appears on page 14, that's fine as well. We can talk about that.
Can I make a distinction as well? The 51,386 is everyone that holds a license in the state of Tennessee. That's an average, which that also includes assistant superintendents and superintendents of schools, which would drive up the average. We have been pressed by previous committees to include comparable data in the southeast region, and the best set of comparable data does exclude superintendents and assistant superintendents. Therefore, those averages are somewhat lower. And I would note that final column on page 14 is an estimate, and really that title should say 15-16, not 14-15. So NEA will estimate what that value would be. So those are the two notable distinctions between the averages.
So on page 14, let's make sure we get this right, okay. So yeah, you're right, we say 14-15 twice, don't we?
Right.
So that needs to say 14-15, then 15-16, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, we got that? It's a great catch. Further discussion on page 9. On page 10, I know I had a comment that said the table of weighted averages, the average at the bottom has no meaning. We want to talk about that or walk through it? Everyone's highly engaged on the tables of numbers, and you can tell that it's riveting.
If anything, what I was referring to there, Nathan, was that average of averages, as far as the dollar value, really has no meaning. Perhaps the average change in percentage and dollar values does have some meaning, but really that 41,636 figure and the 48,121 figure really means nothing. So if anything, I would remove those.
I agree. I would agree too. You don't want to average over a period of years.
Right.
Okay, so
it might be helpful to just strike the whole last line, that average.
strike the average out. Okay. All right. On to page 11, without objection. All right, so the range between maximum and minimum of weighted average salary is 15,036, not 15,306. Sounds like we had just a little swapped digit or two.
And in that narrative as well, weighted average salary disparity of approximately 38%. I think the 0.7 is missing, so that might add some clarity to that as well.
38.7%. Okay. Anything else on 11? All right, page 12. Brad?
I love the table at the top. That's fantastic. There's just a few inaccuracies on that. On 2016, that minimum weighted average, there's just a transposition in numbers. It needs to actually be 38,853 rather than 583, and it does the same thing to the range. It needs to be 15,036, and that disparity is not 39.67. It is the 38.7. So just a few changes there.
All right, and the range should be 15,000.
36.
And 5036. Okay. Easily done. Easily done. Further changes? All right. Page 13. No changes. Page 14, that's where we had the 15, 16 needed to be changed, right? 14, 15, 15, 16, estimated, typo. And then the appendices. Further discussion?
There are a couple of appendices that need to be corrected. I don't know how quickly you want to move through these. There's all the weighted average, or the salary disparity tables first. I don't know. Are they okay? All right. If those are okay, then in
Page 18, the bottom,
Oh.
you do need to fix that middle column. It should be FY16.
Oh, yeah, okay.
What page was that, Rick?
18?
18,
18.
the
Okay.
football group.
That's correct.
Well, and I'll tell you what, it looks like on page 17, what are we looking at, FY04?
Four is the beginning of the salaries disparity study, but he did put, correctly point out that at the bottom of that page on the Cookville region in the middle, that should say FY16.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And then, so going from page 18 to 19, looks like all that is FY16 and FY15. Let's also say this, if everyone agrees, I would like to ask permission to allow the department to send any technical corrections. This is what we did last year in between our third and our fourth meeting, to just make sure that any final numbers that come in, or final corrections that they can be placed in, if that's all right with everyone, I'll just say, hey, to the department, please feel free to send those changes. Further discussion on the matter?
I had a comment on, or a question really, on page 29. That's the summary of the costs of the various improvements that we looked at, changing ratios, funding at the average salary, etc. At the bottom, there are some grand totals which total up the individual costs of those changes. My concern there is twofold. The total of all those costs, if they were all implemented in 1 year, the total cost of the state is not the simple sum of the individual costs, and so that's a little bit misleading.
Sure.
The other concern is that I would not want anyone to look at this and think that we were underfunding by $400+ million, or that these were things that the state was admitting were needed but were not funding. I don't want to. To me, the total sort of gives it the impression that this is the total that we would need to really, I don't know, not necessarily move forward. I just don't want to give the impression that we're underfunding by this amount.
So we strike the grand totals?
And I would be more comfortable without grand totals.
Is there objection? All right, without objection, we'll strike the grand totals. The other pieces on that chart?
I'll send you
This is Rick again. Remind me, and I was trying to find it from last year, did we put the salary component at the state average? Was that part of the recommendation?
No, it wasn't. And this year it isn't either, so we can strike that, can't we? Because we're just saying continue your commitment, not set it at a particular average.
I agree. That's a good catch.
Yep, very good. Okay, we're going to strike BEP salary component set at FY16 average.
Okay. Now, Mary, this is Ari again. Now, with respect to the grand totals, I totally understand the point you're making. My only concern is that if we don't make some kind of acknowledgement about that concern specifically, I think the average layperson is probably apt to attempt to do exactly what I did and, try and calculate a total cost by summing these figures together just as we did here.
Let me ask this, hold on, Ari.
That could or should be said to.
Yeah, just one thought on that. I mean, if we removed the BEP component salary state average 51,363 and took out that $367 million, which is nowhere called for in the report, if we did that and stuck with the other parts, would that be, is that still inaccurate? Because you'd have to add the 5% if it was in the formula, and if it was outside of the formula, it'd be different every time. So we just need to strike the grand totals and strike the BEP salary.
It's not an accurate number. I mean, even if someone were to add them up, that's not what it would, if I were to take all those and run them through the formula, you would not get that grand total. It would be a different number.
Right. Okay, so I guess what I'm asking is there language we could use to explain that somewhere, like right here, so that other people reading the report aren't tempted to make the same mistake?
I think they're welcome to do that on their own if they choose to do so, but I don't think we need to put them in that direction on our own.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. No, absolutely. I agree completely. I just wasn't sure if we wanted to have some additional language clarifying.
That's what we'll do.
Well,
We'll strike that.
Also, in your language, right above that summary table, you say provide the summary of the total projected cost. Maybe just provide the summary of each recommendation and take out that language.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Mary Ann, could I ask a question?
Yes.
If we take the BEP salary component of 51,363, is that not the basis of calculating that $367 million?
It is.
But the point is that's not what the committee voted on.
Correct.
So it was this represents essentially a mistake. Say again?
Okay.
Yeah.
So to be clear, go ahead.
So actually, we didn't give a figure. We just wanted to move forward.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
And so is that what the committee would like to see in that table as well? I mean, we don't want any dollar value. Do we want salaries in this table at all?
No, it's going to be deleted.
Or,
it's
okay.
Yeah, that's going to come out because it's that's like last year. We didn't put a number in there at all, and what we got was the second largest investment by the state of Tennessee in its history, and the largest without a tax increase. So this is, when it comes to how can we work this process to get the best effect for the districts, for the students, and for educators, it's a matter of giving flexibility to the budget writers and the appropriators. And so I think what we'll do is we're going to eliminate this column, BEP salary component set at FY16, blah, 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 and the grand totals, and take out total projected cost for there. Is there any objection to that on page 29?
One other thought on page 29 is that the title is cost estimates for 2015 or 16 committee recommendations.
And it should be 16, yeah.
Yep.
Reliable estimates for 2018 BP. Okay, so does that take care of us then?
I'll work with Ari on the variance column for the EL change. That is appears to be incorrect.
Okay, sounds good. Well,
so then in Appendix D, are you also going to take out the column fiscal year 17 salary at 51,363 if we're not going to project that?
Yes. Yes.
In every instance in this report and its appendices where that appears, it will go away.
In essence, we're leaving completely out the salary improvement component altogether. So we're going to make some mention of it so that if I were just picking this up and looking at this sheet, I would not assume that we had forgotten completely about the salary component.
Well, if you look at just this sheet and none of the rest of the report without that, you might come to that conclusion. But if you look at the front of the report where it talks about our priorities, number one priority is sustained commitment to educator compensation. which is exactly what we did last year and got that large bump. So I think that would be a defensible move. While that particular appendix might not have it in there, the first statement we make after, the first statement we make of what is the BEP Review Committee most concerned about, number one, is sustained commitment to educator compensation. So I think we nailed that pretty strong at the front end.
I just guess, I wonder if we even need Appendix C that probably does.
Appendix C,
Page 29.
Do members wish to eliminate the entirety of Appendix C?
I don't want to eliminate it because for us, this is what we go to look and at least have a rough estimate of what these things would cost. We know what the increase in the salary is, or roughly, 1%, what that costs. But the rest of these things, this is helpful. And I would point out, Mary Ann, if you change the EL ratio number here, you also need to do that on page 6, because that's the same number.
Well, this is correct. We're going, the change that's being proposed is to fund what is in the law, the 1 to 20 and 1 to 200.
And that was actually.
I meant the 16923 number is also reflected on page 6. So if it's a different number, it can be corrected both places.
The 16923, the cost is correct. It is incorrect in the table or Appendix D. It is correct in C, but not in D.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I didn't make that clear. That's a good catch.
Yeah, D has 47 million instead of 16.
That's the guidance counselor cost.
Oh, okay.
47 million is the guidance counselor cost. It's in there twice.
Oh, okay. So we've got the guidance counselor. If you don't mind just sending me an email with that specific correction, I want to make sure it's right. So this was highly productive. I think this was a great use of time. We're at 1 hour and 7 minutes. Are there further details to be hashed out and by any member?
Nathan, this is Vincent Javier, Fayette County.
Yes, sir.
And back to what Karen was talking about on the page 29. We said we're leaving that there, right?
See, it's already, it's on page 5, 6, 7, and 8. Those numbers are already there, and we're just leaving out
concerning
one
the
component.
salary component.
Right, we're just leaving out the salary
Yeah,
component.
because that was a mistake on the front end, because this committee never voted on a particular number, and it just said a sustained commitment, and so that was that shouldn't have been in there, just plain and simple. So
Could you put in somewhat as a footnote the repeat of what was said on page 6? The committee again, just as a footnote, the committee again commends the Governing Assembly for their commitment and leaves to their discretion to continue funding to increase salaries.
I don't see any objection to that necessarily. I mean, we could just lift that language verbatim and put it at the bottom of a sheet on the next page. Is there objection from any member to that?
And then that way you still have that part of this Appendix C, which summarizes everything that's in the report, and to say that there is some concern about the salary component.
And this is Rick. Another option may be to say the 1% increase to the salary component costs, whatever it is, 27 million or whatever that number is.
Well, again, I mean, for the folks who really need to know that, they kind of already do. I mean, you're talking about F&A, you're talking about yourself, you're talking about members of the Finance, Ways and Means Committees and things like that. And it's whereas last year we took the open-ended language like what you have here on page 6, and we said, you know, please do what you can on this, and what we got was some really excellent results. That's where I would say let's just keep the open-ended language, knowing full well that you all in the Senate Budget Office and your colleagues on the House side and your F&A colleagues in the administration are going to work through the precise numbers.
I think either adding a footnote or you could just take where it is in this table and put BEP salary and put dash sustained commitment and for estimated cost to be determined, but something where or the footnote idea and recognizing that you're still interested in sustaining salary, and I think that takes care of it.
Yeah, I think the footnote is probably pretty easily done. Any objection?
Well, I'm wondering exactly what we're going to have. I mean, I think I'm a little frustrated with this thing. If we're going to put together a report that's asking for what we think we can get, I mean, I think we're supposed to be reviewing the formula to determine what are the actual real-world costs of the education program, and does the formula recognize that? So, I mean, that's one of the biggest ticket items. I think we should at least point out real-world actual salaries being paid are this much. The formula does not match that, and here's the discrepancy. I know there's some stuff on page 9, I think, earlier in the report, but I don't want to just get to a point where we're asking for things just because we think that's what someone wants to hear.
All right. Further discussion? Mr. Chairman Ralston, it's all yours.
Okay, well, really good discussion. I certainly appreciate everybody being here and participating in this. I think we made some significant improvements. We'll get all this drafted up, get it back to everybody, and hope to see you on Thursday for final vote on the final draft of the thing. But I do appreciate everybody's involvement.
And we will work to get it out as soon as possible, sir.
Okay. Very good. Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.